Welcome back. I'm really excited about this module, Module 8, Intersectionality, in our series on trauma-informed practices for schools. I'm going to introduce you today to Kimberly Crenshaw, who's a pioneering legal expert, a leading scholar. She coined the term intersectionality. She's also the executive director of African American Policy Forum and a professor of law at UCLA and Columbia. Dr. Crenshaw won the Winslow Medal from the Yale School of Public Health, the school's highest honor, which recognizes outstanding public health leadership and contributions to society. She's one of my favorite people. I've looked at and read just about everything she's written down, and her perspectives on how to see people and how to look at issues, why people might be facing oppression in a multiplicity of ways, and then how to really unravel that so that we can see humans as their whole selves and understand what they might be facing in their lives. Let's dig into it a little bit. This is just a tiny model of intersectionality. There's lots of these models online. This is just a brief example of how Dr. Crenshaw and not myself see the world. When I meet a person, I'm not looking at them through the lens of my own biases, implicit and explicit, about who this human is. I'm really looking for clues about how they identify in terms of who they are, how they see themselves, and therefore the world, and then how I might support them. We know that when people are experiencing oppression, certainly in different systems, that those things are experienced simultaneously, and the impact is simultaneous. Dr. Crenshaw will explain to you in the video that we're about to show how that works in schools and with students. We each have various identities, places that we've come to throughout our life, whether we've been taught that this is who we are, or whether we've really claimed those identities for ourselves and decided how we were going to present to the world and what we were going to show the world. Nevertheless, whether they're perceived by the outside world inaccurately or accurately impact us. And this is where the important intersectionalities of gender, sexuality, race, and culture come into play for various individuals, depending on their life experiences and how they've developed throughout their lifetime. So let's meet Dr. Crenshaw now.
Intersectionality is just a metaphor for understanding the ways that multiple forms of inequality or disadvantage sometimes compound themselves, and they create obstacles that often are not understood within conventional ways of thinking about anti-racism or feminism or whatever social justice advocacy structures we have. Intersectionality isn't so much a grand theory, it's a prism for understanding certain kinds of problems. African American girls are 6 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. That's probably a race and a gender problem. It's not just a race problem, it's not just a gender problem. So I encourage people to think about how the convergence of race stereotypes or gender stereotypes might actually play out in the classroom, between teachers and students, between students and other students, between students and administrators, and commit themselves to understanding that as a way of intervening and providing equal educational opportunity for all students, regardless of their identities. Identity isn't simply a self-contained unit. It is a relationship between people in history, people in communities, people in institutions. So schools do a good job when they understand that and when they commit themselves to curricular development, to opportunities in the school for all students to understand the histories that have brought us to this particular moment. You can't change outcomes without understanding how they've come about. So independent schools can take the lead on that to be responsive to their student populations and to the communities out of which the students come.
I hope that you enjoyed that video by Dr. Crenshaw. I'm going to invite you now to take a look at the intersection of foster care and LGBTQIA2S children. You may not know what the 2S for is for. It's also sometimes written S2. That's for two-spirit children. Let's dive in to those impacts that those children in particular are facing in schools presently. What we know is true is that 78% of LGBTQIAS2, and I'm going to say queer children just as the umbrella term from here on out, who are in care have been removed or chosen to run away from their placement due to hostility towards their sexual orientation or their gender identity. This is really important for us to note. Number one, it points to trauma, specifically separation. And we know that those children's needs were not being met. This study is backed up by lots of other folks who have looked at these issues. In the criminal justice system, there are as many as 40% of girls in custody who identify as something other than heteronormative. Most of those girls ended up on the street because they ran away or their family kicked them out. They then turned to survival crimes such as sex work, stealing, selling drugs, and then entered into the criminal justice system. So we know that there is a very real trend and impact on queer kids being locked up because of our failure on the end to accept them when they are in care and to allow them to be themselves. And they'd rather leave their homes and be on the street than be somewhere where they're being treated badly or experiencing hostile behavior. 78%, again, have been removed or chosen to run away because of hostility towards their sexual identity or their gender identity. 100% of queer kids in group homes have reported verbal harassment, while 70% have reported incidents of physical violence. Now, this is so important for us to pay attention to, and we know that it's also happening in the schools. This bully behavior, whether from kids or even from teachers or therapists, where people are not accepting who they are and acknowledging who they are, and then celebrating that with them as they're trying to navigate through the world, can make it so uncomfortable for them that they choose to leave school or leave a foster care situation. We don't want these kids ending up in juvenile facilities. That is not the way to go for them. So we're really looking at this disproportionate amount of children who are being incarcerated in large part for who they are because they winded up on the street and they had to survive. And how do they do that? In the queer community, a lot of those children will turn to sex work. And this is also something that we don't want. So what can we do? Before we get to that, we want to really look at some more statistics about queer kids, especially in foster care. When we look at reported incidents of verbal assaults due to gender or sexual identity specifically while children are in care, we know that 67% of Black children and 73% of Latinx children experience these things. It's not just because they're Black or Latinx. It's also because of the intersection of their queerness. So in care, we need to be really mindful. It's like a double whammy for them. They're already in care, which is hard enough. Then they're a child of color. And then they're also queer. So we want to be really mindful of these children and their needs to be accepted and validated for who they are and supported around those pieces. Reported a history of running away or homelessness prior to entering the criminal justice system. 24% of straight and gender conforming children reported that they had a history of running away. 44% of queer kids and gender nonconforming children reported that they have a history of running away or homelessness. This impacted me personally, as I shared earlier on, when I was removed from my school for being then identified as a gay kid. Having had my mother turn me in, I had nowhere to go, and I landed on the streets in Ventura. I was blessed in that I had a truck that I could sleep in, so I was relatively safe in that situation. At least I had a safe container where I could sleep. Eventually, I figured out how to get out of that situation. But what I learned in one of the steps, when I was able to have enough money to actually get out of my truck and get into a pay by the hour hotel, yes, which was a step up for me, I saw tons of people in that hotel in Ventura who were gender nonconforming or queer and people of color who were just trying to make it work. Many of those people were sex workers. We want our children to have a different way of living and not have to turn to survival crimes in order to succeed and take care of their basic needs. I'm blessed also that I did not have to turn to any of those illegal activities for my survival, but I do know many people who did. They're now doing okay. Thank goodness, I'm happy to tell you that. But this is really something that we should be very, very concerned about. And why are those people doing okay? Because someone intervened. Someone stepped in. Someone helped them get off the streets and helped them to get good jobs and housing so that they could take care of themselves in a way that was beneficial to them. We can't ignore the disparity here. Almost double when we think about kids that have a history of running away and homelessness. Because of our current political situation in the United States of America, we're going to see more of this. In fact, in California, we know that upwards of 40% of kids who are on the street presently identify as queer. They tell us that they're on the streets because their families were not accepting, their schools were not accepting, that they were being harassed at school, that their teacher was not accepting, all kinds of reasons, and they chose to run away, and they'd rather live on the streets. Again, not what we want. We don't want children on the streets. We don't want anyone on the streets, especially children, where they can be exposed to a lot of violence and untoward things. So what can we do? We can understand about intersectionality and how it compounds issues that are already faced by these children. Keeping in mind that the Chief Probation Officers of California did a study of queer kids who are locked up, and what they found is that it is the majority children of color who also have the intersection of being queer. That report is available to you in the Padlet if you would like to look at that, and it's disturbing to think about the large amount of children who, by no fault of their own, had to leave their house so that they could try to find safety and ended up on the streets. You can have an impact with this. In our classrooms, are we creating inclusive environments where pronouns are respected from children? When children tell us who they are, we don't try to talk them out of it. Instead, we celebrate with them who they are, recognizing that as children, it's fluid and it may be changing, and we're there to support them to be the best human they can be, as we are with all children, regardless of their intersections. We know that queer children in care are 3 times more likely to attempt suicide than their not queer, gender-conforming peers who are not in care. We also don't want this in the system. We don't want to experience this. And as I tell people in my classes, you don't have to agree with someone. You don't have to love that part of themselves. What we have to do, though, is follow the law and support these kids. And the last thing we want is a child to take their life because they are being bullied and not accepted for who they are. 3 times more likely to attempt to take their lives. Queer kids in care who attend gender-affirming schools had a 50% lower odds of reporting an attempted suicide. We know that when children are affirmed for who they are, whatever their intersections, they do better. We know that people have a primary need to tell us who they are, for self-identification, and to have agency in those regards. 13% of queer children in care in Los Angeles reported being treated poorly by the system, compared to that of non-queer kids. So again, we know that those disparities are there. We know that these children are not getting the care and attention that they need. We know that people aren't seeing them for who they are in large part. And with all of the news, anti-LGBTQ legislation, we know that California is going to be meeting more and more needs as those kids travel to California so that they can find safety there, which traditionally in our community has been the place to go, California and New York. And that's where kids end up. If you want to learn more about this history and that talks about this sort of thing, in particular with queer kids of color, I invite you to check out the series Pose, P-O-S-E. It's a beautifully done documentary style of several people navigating their lives who are trying to find community and the impact that that has had on us over time in our communities. I hope that you enjoyed hearing Dr. Crenshaw, and I hope that you will take to heart her message that a person is complex and complicated, that our many intersections matter. And when we look at those intersections with an open heart and are accepting of people in terms of how they identify and what they need, while at the same time looking at our biases about people. Do I have biases about children of color? Am I really treating people fairly in my classrooms? This was something we studied in the facility where I worked, and we looked at IRs, or incident reports, and we looked at how many kids were being written up and for what and why. And we were able to determine that there were certain children that staff saw as a problem who were doing the very same thing that other kids were doing who were white, and those children that they considered problematic were children of color. So we have to look at this. Am I really being fair? Is my implicit bias, my unknown bias, that bias inside of me that I may not even be aware of, is that playing a part? And there's many studies about this, as I'm sure you're aware, in classrooms with teachers, where they're more punitive of black and brown kids than white kids. I'm sure that that is not something that is a part of who you want to be. And I know that you want to be fair in treating kids with respect and dignity, regardless of how they come to you, regardless of their intersections. If you want to learn more about this, we've posted several articles on the Padlet link, which is a navy blue today, and I invite you to go and take a look at that. Lots of information there for you to explore about how intersectionality impacts the children who are in care. Thank you for your choice to be present with us for this section on intersectionality. I hope that you've enjoyed it and learned some things. I hope that you will look at the Padlet and see the additional resources that we have. We will be using the same color for the next section, which is self-care and vicarious trauma. I think you'll find it interesting. It's going to be about how you can take care of yourself because you matter in this situation. And if you don't take care of you and put that oxygen mask on first, it's hard for you to take care of anyone else. I'm really grateful for your time, and we'll see you in the next section. Take care.